Hi there and welcome to this video on the Ace of Wands. So we're going to start off going through the minor arcana and court cards again of the Thoth deck, updating the notes and videos that I've done previously and hopefully improving them along the way. So we'll start with this card, the Ace of Wands, and we're starting with this particular card because all of the other minor arcana cards, including the aces and all of the other cards within those particular suits, arise from the Ace of Wands, as do all of the court cards. So I'm going to go into that in more detail in the more philosophical part of the video, but for those that just want a basic divinatory meaning of the Ace of Wands, we will quickly go through that, and then right at the end of the video we'll come back to divination and look at how the Ace of Wands plays out in each position of the Celtic Cross spread. For the divinatory part of this video, I just thought it would be easier for me just to highlight my notes that I've got on my website from the article that accompanies this particular video, and it says the aces of any suit usually indicate new beginnings. So this is pretty important. It's the ace, it's the beginning of the suit, it's the beginning of the energy of the particular suit, so new beginnings and usually very productive. So the aces, unless they're ill-dignified, are usually a very positive card to get. So wands are in the realm of accomplishment and are generally related to your work and career goals. It's not exclusive. The wands are all to do with spirituality, not as direct as the major arcana are, but the Ace of Wands does have a very spiritual side to it as well. If you have, for instance, if you're having a difficult time and draw the Ace of Wands in reading, know that things are likely to get much better very soon, and that you have the potential to succeed. So the aces are about potential. They're about bringing forth that energy from the beginning of that particular suit and developing your, in the case of wands, your intuition, your creative spark, that zest for life. So more specifically now, we look at the upright divinatory meanings. The Ace of Wands indicates a time in your life where you have that breakthrough moment of insight. It's that flash of inspiration. You'll see the torch here. There's a lot of energy issuing forth from the card. It's ablaze with that creative element which you have inside you. So it's a breakthrough moment of insight, and you feel very inspired and motivated about an idea to move your life forward. It feels like a big opportunity has opened up for you. Point 2, as the aces are about potential, this card suggests that you now have the possibility of tapping into your latent potential that has been unused, perhaps for some time. This is therefore the perfect time to draw upon your imagination and make your dreams reality. So what this is saying is, essentially, if you draw this card, it's a great time to look inside you and see what really motivates you and inspires you in life, and to actually go for that particular goal. Because as adults, life gets in the way. It tends to sort of squash our creativity a lot of the time. So this card is reminding us to get back in touch with that. I said it has a more spiritual side, so it says in a more spiritual sense it indicates that you are on fire with your passion for your soul's journey. That's all to do with the major arcana and discovering your spiritual path. So there's an opportunity like this to rewrite your life, so you can give time and justice to this most important aspect of yourself. So it's reminding you to get back in touch with your spiritual purpose, as well as work and career goals. Now looking at the reverse divinatory meanings of the Ace of Wands. So this card represents a very raw energy. As you see, it outpours here. It's not really going in any specific direction. And so therefore, if it's applied wrongly, it can lead to somewhat reckless and headstrong actions. So make sure you don't get carried away with new projects, sort of rushing headlong into something that's not really being considered thoroughly enough. It may also indicate a period of low energy and vitality. So you may feel a lack of stamina. Sometimes you've got some things that you need to do, things that you need to get off the ground, and you just don't feel like you can handle them. You don't feel like you've got the energy to proceed and develop what would really be quite good for your life. It can indicate being restless, but really sort of unable to find a direction to put your energies into. So really this is a time to look at what you really want to do. It may be a time that opportunities have arisen, but they don't really connect with your creativity. I've mentioned difficulty getting your projects off the ground. So this is to do with like the reversed aspects of this card. And also, as you'll see towards the end of the video, if the card is crossing here, I tend to see that as almost like a reversal of this card, because the main energy or the main focal point of a reading is card number 1, and that is effectively blocked by number 2. You can't see it, so I feel that this crossing card is like a reversal. So anyway, that's a brief overview of the divinatory meanings of this card, and we'll now look at the philosophical and spiritual aspects of this card in detail. In this next section for the Ace of Wands, we'll get straight into the symbolism of the card, and there's a load of numbers there. I'm going to start with the outer numbers here. So we've got 1 to 18, and they represent the individual lightning flashes coming from the central wand here. The number 18 is, or as is all the numbers really in these Thoth cards, they're all very important. The number 18 in Hebrew relates to the word CHAI, which means living or life. So what it's implying is that this card brings forth new life, and we talked about a little bit about that in the previous section on divination, where this card represents the exploring of one's potential and the fulfillment of that creative spark. With regards to this this word here that's associated with this card, the word chai is made up of 2 letters. The most obvious one is yod, which we see here, the flaming yods, and the other letter here, which is Chet. And these symbols have been found their way into jewellery here, so this type of symbolism on jewellery would obviously have something related to that person's feeling of getting in touch with their inner self, their creativity, getting in touch with life itself. And these lightning flashes are green because they are associated again with creativity. These flaming yods are 10 in number, and that relates to the sephira of the Tree of Life. And you can see here that this would be to do with Keter, Chokmah, Binah, and so on. And we'll look at the Tree of Life as we go through these cards. And the whole Tree of Life here is essentially a flame. So we've got these flaming yods. So they are again associated with creativity. And I've drawn an arrow here because again this represents the Tree of Life here. It's a little bit hidden in this card, but you know, it's connecting all the relevant sephira. And so on. Here we've got essentially what is a red background. So this card is associated with fire signs, and we'll explore these a little bit deeper in the next section. It's not associated with any particular sign, it's just indicative of the fire signs in general. We've got this central wand here which has phallic like implications. So with Crowley everything seemed to have the sexual connotation, but we're talking about that creative macrocosmic spark. So this card is to do with spiritual life as well. As the microcosm, which is all about the individual. And this ties in with career and life opportunities. So this is how it relates to the meaning, the divinatory meanings of this card. The odds here represent ejaculated sperm as well. So you know you've got something which summarizes Crowley's whole philosophy, which is sexual alchemy. Which is what's happening on a macrocosmic level and microcosmic level within the practicing adept. So these are a couple of quotes from the book of Thoth, and one of the first one says, with regards to the Ace of Wands, it is a solar phallic outburst of flame which springs lightnings in every direction. So the word solar phallic does imply, well, solar to me was like solar system. Again, this idea of the macrocosm, and phallic, again, microcosm. And again, this idea that the whole of the universe is nothing but one great sexual bang. Okay, and the second quote here is, the great point is that all these elemental forces, such as the fire, water, earth, are blind forces and no more. So I guess that implies they have to be animated by our consciousness. So if we're using these energies in these cards and we are channeling them in a positive way, then they are dignified or upright. And if we're channeling them in a in a more destructive way, it's represented by the card being reversed, and we get situations which are far more in conflict. In this section, we're going to look at the relationship of the Ace of Wands to the Tetragrammaton. The Tetragrammaton is used quite a lot in understanding the minor arcana. Tetragrammaton really is a classification of the different facets of God, as the God principle is expressed throughout the creation. That's probably a good enough way of putting it. The fact that God is a unity is something else, but we're looking here at the parts of the universe, so hence we've got these different principles here. So we've got the Yod, which is the male, the He, which is female, the Vav, which is like the sun, and the He final, that's more often called, which is the daughter, with the sun being both the brother and the consort to the female. So you get this principle of the returning cycle and the sort of everlasting nature of life. So the cycle doesn't end at the end here, it goes back again. All of the wands are associated with Yod, and so the Ace of Wands is represented by Yod. All of the cups of the minor arcana are associated with He. Then you have the swords associated with the Vav, and the He final, we've got discs. So in this way, from right to left, we have the fire, water, air, and earth. So we have like the 4 elements. So we have the creation here of something, the feeling of it, the intellectualizing of it, and the materialization of it. So when we're talking about the meaning of the Ace of Wands, it's like this is the process that that idea that is born in the Ace here in Yod is finally manifested here in the He final. brings us to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here is part of the original documents of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and here is where the Tetragrammaton was in original verses that were supposed to be included in biblical text. But, you know, for religious stroke political reasons, they were taken out. So this is not so obvious in you know, versions like King James's Bible and the like. The word of the Tetragrammaton is Jehovah. Jehovah. It's supposed to be the unspoken word of God. It's my contention that this unspoken word is because the true nature of God cannot be spoken. In fact, it tells you that in the Bible, and therefore it is something which can only be experienced spiritually. But anyway, I digress. So we're now looking at the Ace of Wands with regards to the Tree of Life. This is the Tree of Life glyph here, and all of the aces are in Keter, which is the top Sephiroth. And Keter is associated with two things, one being the point, which represents unity. It's a little bit like with, this is just an analogy, with the Big Bang Theory. You had the point here, and inside that point the whole universe existed, so even space could not exist. It is all within the point. So essentially you just have one unity, and then you have the creation in its diverse forms. And so in the Hindu religion, this is known as pralaya. It's like the out-breath and in-breath of creation, and consciousness. But this is more on a cosmic sort of scale here. So going back to the Ace of Wands here, the Ace of Wands is the very first card of the minor arcana. All of, I think I mentioned in the beginning, all of the other cards in the minor arcana and the court cards spring from the Ace of Wands, and we'll see that in the diagram more clearly below. So Keter is associated with the point. It's also associated with crown, which, because it's on top of the Tree of Life here, and if we go back to the, I think the original drawing here, I was talking about, or even back to the divinatory meanings, I was talking about here this breakthrough moment, this flash of insight. So this is coming from the higher centers. Even with the Rider-Waite diagram, which I haven't got here, of the Ace of Wands, it's coming out of a cloud. So the ace is not actually embedded in the ground. So it's something that comes from a higher center, and that's represented again by Keter. So that's the explanation of that links in the Ace of Wands with the words that are associated with Keter. I also said that the Ace of Wands is the first card from which all of the others spring, and that is because the fourfold nature of God, which was the Tetragrammaton, is not only reflected in the suits of the minor arcana, but it's also reflected in 4 different worlds. So you have 4 trees of life, and you can think of it as a descending energy flash. So you've got 1 tree of life here, energy flash, and essentially you've got 4 different worlds. So with regards to Keter in this world, B.O.T.A, that would be the Ace of Cups. Here in Keter, here we have the Ace of Swords, and in Keter in Asaya here we have the Ace of Discs. So the energy will go roughly here, down here, here, down here, and it all interlinks. So from the Ace of Wands, this is where the energy goes, in this direction. That's the way it manifests. So I will sum all this up in a little table. So we've got the element of fire, and we've got the world, the Kabbalistic world here, Azilut, which is the highest associated with wands. Then we've got water associated with B.O.T.A and cups. You've got Yetzirah, the third world, associated with air and swords, and Asaya associated with earth and discs. The other sections in this are the fire, which is Yod, water, which was the Hey primal, the air, which is the Vav, and the Hey final, which is the related to earth. The only other thing here that I haven't gone into, and I won't, is that this also divides the soul up into 4 parts, but the soul is essentially a monad with no parts. I can describe this very briefly, but I don't want to go off track because I know this video is getting very long. But essentially you have got, if you think of this as your soul, then it takes on various identities in various different lives. So the division comes here. But the soul has more of a unity. So this really is more of an intellectual classification there. I don't want to say any more than that. The Ace of Wands can also be understood by its astrology, and I've linked the fire signs of Aries, Sagittarius and Leo here. So the glyph of the element of fire is in fact an upward pointing triangle. These signs are associated with the characteristics of the Ace of Wands, such as for Sagittarius it's associated with insight, philosophy. There, I said it was spiritual. Leo is to do with energy, the red background, character, building. And Aries desire, that will to transform the potential of the ace into something that you really want to achieve. Just before we go on to the last section, which is the Celtic Cross interpretation using the Ace of Wands, and this is the Golden Dawn version of this card, where we have like a, seems like a branch here, the Yods here, this time number 22. You got 6, 10 and 6, which can represent 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet and the 22 paths of the major arcana. And you've got the branches here, which are 10 in number, representing the Sephirah. Don't want to go into this in great detail. I haven't really studied it myself. This finger here, I know it points, there's going to be a reason for that. I don't know what it is. It's not the purpose of this video, but anyway, I'll be showing you the Golden Dawn version in the forthcoming videos, just as a comparison. This is the very last section of this video, and as I promised, we'll go through the application of the Ace of Wands in the positions of the Celtic Cross spread. So this is the card positions that I use for the Celtic Cross. It does vary from person to person. So for card 1, the central theme of the spread, the Ace of Wands appears here. It relates to a time to tap into your creativity and explore how you can make your life more spiritual and, in a worldly sense, more inspiring and fulfilling. If the card is in the crossing influences here, card 2 can relate to you being stuck in a time when you feel you're uninspired by life and you don't seem to be able to sort of create those things and that lifestyle that you particularly want to. Subconscious influences here. So it might be that just in the back of your mind you've been feeling that you're not being as productive and as fulfilled as you really want to be, but perhaps you're too scared to look at that particular aspect of yourself. You know, pressures of modern life, pressures to pay the bills, that sort of thing. Lots of things, trauma, lots of things can make us squash those creative desires and needs as we get into adulthood. Recent past affecting the situation, I have to get my spelling right there, could have been a time of immense creativity, or if this card is reversed, it could mean that you did have plans to explore your spiritual side, for instance, and things got in the way and it didn't quite happen. Card 5, hopes and goals. To fulfill your potential and be inspired by life. Card 6, immediate future. A time where that breakthrough moment can occur and your life can take on a whole new meaning. So this would be a great time to take action and fulfill that potential of the Ace. Card 7, how you are affecting your own situation. Again, implies a need to tap into your creative spark and do something to make your life more holistic. So depending on the dignity of that card will depend on how you are applying this creativity within you and how much you are fulfilling your potential. How others are affecting your situation for card 8. So others may be sapping your potential. It could be at work, in a relationship, that sort of thing. And therefore this may be a prompt to change your external environment so that it supports your need to move your life in a different direction. Guidance and warning said you will fail to fulfill your life's potential if you don't connect with this intuitive spark and change your life course for one that supports spiritual needs and inspires your daily life. Card 10, overall outcome. It relates to new beginnings, exploring that potential in sync with your spiritual and daily life, aligning with your intuition, and to be able to explore life and find contentment. So that's rather a lot on the Ace of Wands. I hope it's been of help, and thanks very much for watching. Really appreciate it. Any comments, questions, just pop them in the description box or in the comments box below. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you again.